Hey guys. Happy Sunday. This is a Christopher Wehkamp Ask Me Almost Anything panel. And what this usually always ends up sort of turning into is I tell you a little bit about myself, kind of how I came to be a voice actor, and then, you know, we open it up to questions. Some of you have, I recognize some faces here, and some of you have come to talk to me this weekend about voice acting and questions that you have. And this is the panel to kind of talk about it. So I'm going to turn it over to you. You can ask questions. We can talk about it. Hopefully I can give you answers to your questions as best I can. But first, tell you a little bit about myself. So I was born and raised in a place called Marietta. Well, I was born in a place called Marietta, Georgia. And then my family moved to Dallas, Texas when I was 3 years old. So I pretty much consider myself a native Texan. I've been there my whole life. And growing up, I was an only child. And yet somehow I had a serious need for attention at all times. And my parents, from a very early age, tried to figure out ways to channel that into something, because I was getting in trouble a lot. And in kindergarten, my teacher, Mrs. Jones, talked to my mom and said, "We're thinking about doing a play for all kids, and I think we want to have Chris be Peter Rabbit in the Peter Rabbit play." And my mom thought this could be a great way to channel some of his need for attention and troublemaking. So I was Peter Rabbit in the kindergarten Peter Rabbit play. And to me, it was like finding the answer at the age of 5 or whatever it was. Because I could stand on a stage and everyone would look at me and they would listen to whatever I said, as long as I was singing the little song in the Peter Rabbit play. And so, yeah, that just was everything I needed in my life at that point. And that was way before any of the artistry or interest in stuff like that. But I did, over the years, I started watching more like movies, and I was a big fan of cartoons as a kid too. So I would come home from school, and one of the shows that was on was Voltron, the original Voltron. I used to watch that. And G.I. Joe and He-Man and even Care Bears. I remember I was really into Care Bears for some reason. I didn't want to admit it to my friends, but I loved Care Bears too. I loved anything that was a cartoon. I was super excited about it. Saturday morning cartoons was like the event of the week, every single week. And I would imitate the voices of the characters that I really loved. And I also noticed that a lot of the voices seem to be the same people. And that's true. If you go back and look at some of those cartoons from the 80s and 90s, it's, there's 12 people or whatever that are kind of doing all of those cartoons. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and the list goes on and on. Silverhawks, even kind of deep cuts like that. I would get the toys, and I'd ask for them for my birthday, for Christmas, and I was just way off into that. But I did notice there was one cartoon in particular, because I didn't even know what the word anime was. They were all cartoons. There was one cartoon in particular that was very different from the others, because people died all the time in it. And yet it would follow He-Man and G.I. Joe. So I would watch He-Man. Everybody had swords, and they were shooting lasers, and no one would ever get hit or cut, and nobody would ever die. And then right after that would be G.I. Joe, and everybody had missiles and lasers, and they would all shoot at each other, and nobody would ever get hit, and nobody would ever die. And then right after that was a show called Star Blazers. And Star Blazers was being rebroadcast. It originally came out back in the 70s, late 70s, and in America anyway. It's being rebroadcast in my region. And it turns out, I've talked to a lot of people since then, people who grew up in my town. Some people did not have Star Blazers, so they just didn't see it. But I was one of the lucky few. In the first couple episodes of Star Blazers, we learn the main character, Susumu Kodai, his brother is killed, and killed very graphically. Not killed in a way that's he dies off screen. His spaceship explodes, and you see the fire inside the spaceship obliterating the entire crew. And it really made an impact on me, because suddenly I really cared about these characters in a way that I didn't care about the G.I. Joe characters, the He-Man characters. And this was my first experience with anime. And I was probably about, I don't know, 6 or 7 years old. So I didn't even know it was anime, it just was Japanese cartoons, that's all I knew. I had a Blockbuster in my town, Blockbuster Video. Some of you probably remember that, some of you maybe have never heard of it before. But this is where we would go to rent these big clunky things called VHS tapes. And there was a section there that was growing, and it was an anime section. And that's where I first saw some really terrible anime dubs for the very first time that I still love to this day. And I'll still go back and revisit some of them to this day because they hold a special place in my heart. My favorite one that I usually end up watching at least once a year is a movie called Bao. Has anybody ever seen Bao? B-A-O-H. You guys don't even know. Okay, one person, yes. No, not the Pixar short. This was way before Pixar. The voice acting is very campy and over the top, and the voices don't always match the flaps, which is the flaps or the mouth moving. And it's very bad, but I still loved it because it was just so different. It was different than everything else I was seeing on TV. So it hooked me into anime even more. And then as I got older, I kept acting. And I went to one-act play competitions with my high school. I played Tartuffe in the play Tartuffe, and we went to regionals. And then we lost, but we went to regionals, and we were happy about it. And I thought what I wanted to do with my life was either make video games, because I was playing lots of video games at the same time, or be an actor, or both. And then in high school, I had one friend who was also into anime. And he and I would just rent everything at Blockbuster that was anime. Every time we'd go in, if there was a new title, we would get it and we would watch it. And one time we saw something called Ninja Scroll. Has anybody seen Ninja Scroll? Ninja Scroll is another, parts of the dub are very bad. Most of the bit parts are terrible. That's sort of how in the old days when they would dub these things, they would have 4 or 5 really solid actors that would be the main roles, and then the people that they would bring in to do kind of the background voices would just be whoever they could get, So you might have a really good lead character, and I think the lead in Ninja Scrolls is very solid. But then you might have the guy who's dying, who has one line. It's the guy at the gas station that they were like, hey, do you want to do a line in this cartoon or whatever? So very uneven as a dub, but a great movie that just kept hooking me in. Then, I went off to college, and I was a theater major, and I showed up and they were like, hey, you have to learn how to sew costumes, and you also have to learn how to do makeup, and you also have to learn how to construct sets. And I was like, I just want to be an actor. I don't want to do any of that. I can't sew things, and I don't want to do that. So I changed my major, and I started studying radio, television, film instead, because they didn't ask me to sew anything. And nothing wrong with sewing, I just didn't want to do that. At the same time I was doing that, Toonami started being a thing. And suddenly there was Dragon Ball Z, and suddenly there was Cowboy Bebop, and suddenly there was Gundam. And I was delivering pizza for Pizza Hut. And I was paying for my way through college. And before I would leave on my shift to go deliver pizza that night, I would sit down with my friends, my roommates, and we would watch DBZ, Gundam, and Cowboy Bebop. Well, Cowboy Bebop started coming on later in the night, so we're like, we don't care, we'll just be up till 2 a.m. watching Cowboy Bebop, that's fine with us. I loved Cowboy Bebop. Cowboy Bebop was the moment where I felt like dubbing anime could be a viable thing as an art form. Because it was so good. Not just the show was good, the actors that were playing these characters in English were amazing. I was so compelled, and it was the first time too in my, I don't even think IMDb was a thing, but I figured out online on the internet who the voice actors were, because I was just so interested, and I figured out who the studio was. And then I learned that the company that was dubbing this stuff, well, not that particular dub, but was dubbing Dragon Ball Z, was just down the road from where I was living. So this was just luck. This was just being in the right place at the right time. Funimation was literally 15 miles away from where I was living. So then I got this idea in my head. What if someday I could figure out a way to start dubbing stuff at Funimation? It was just a crazy dream. Didn't seem like a possibility. Fast forward, I graduated from college. I was still enjoying anime, still enjoying cartoons, but I was, trying to be a serious professional, I thought. I'm going to be a documentary filmmaker. That was my plan. And I immediately set out to become a documentary filmmaker, realized that nobody was paying for that, and started working in the IT industry. And at the same time, I kept acting on the side. So theater productions, community theater, things like that. My wife and I got married in 2008. We bought a home in 2010, the same year that she got pregnant with my twin boys, who are 8 years old now. And priorities completely changed for me with the arrival of my kids. And I saw suddenly a future for myself that looked a lot like acting on the side, never enough time for it, paying for mortgages and food and doctor's visits for my family and my children with an IT career for the next 40 years. That's what I was looking at ahead of me. And I kind of panicked. And I just frantically sent an email to Funimation one night. And this was in 2010, after the birth of my twin boys. And I basically just, it was a quick bio. Here's the most recent plays that I had done around town. Here's a couple links to some of the stuff that was online that I'd done, for radio, VO. And it was just a lark, maybe I'll get something back. I didn't hear anything back for about 4 or 5 months. And then out of the blue, I got an email from the casting director at Funimation, and she said, "We'd like to have you in to audition." And so I went into this tiny little cramped booth with a guy named Joel McDonald, who was the director of the One Piece dub at Funimation for like the last 15 years. If you've seen any One Piece dub, he was the director of it. He now works at Gearbox Games in Frisco. And I met him, and he put me down, and here's the screen on my right. On the screen on my right is the actual show, the scene from the show. The screen on my left has the script. And then in front of me is a microphone, got some headphones on. The director is to my right through a window, the director and the engineer. And he says, "You're gonna hear 3 beeps, and where you would hear the 4th beep, that's when you start doing the line. So we're gonna do this first line." And the first line was, CM angry. Now, I didn't want to look stupid. This is a fatal mistake on my part. You should always ask questions when you don't know what the thing is, right? There are no stupid questions. Well, I was too in my own head, and I didn't want to look stupid. I didn't want to be embarrassed, so I didn't ask what that meant. And I just quickly in my mind was like, what could that mean? Well, it's obviously an exert of some kind. Maybe the character's angry and he makes a sound, and that's what that CM sort of means. So I hear the beep, 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 and on the 4th beep, my character's mouth, the flap opens, and that's where I'm supposed to say the line. So I go, and Joel comes on the talk back, and he's like, the CM means closed mouth. So what I was supposed to do was similar to that, but it was supposed to be more like with a closed mouth, right? But I thought the character was actually saying "come," which is, so anyway, that's all to say, I was very bad at this when I started out. And I thought after that session, probably I'd never be called back again. And, but I was glad to have been there. It was a cool experience. Turns out they did call me back, and it was because Joel came from the theater. So I came from the theater too. So he understood that actors who are coming from the theater are not used to any of this, and they just need a lot of reps. They need a lot of practice with the technical aspects of it. They need to learn the lingo of the script. They need, so he understood that, thank goodness. Some of the directors have not come from a theatrical background. They didn't, maybe wouldn't have given me another chance, but Joel did. And so So I got asked back again. And I just did little bits here and there. There was a lot of dying. When you start off doing voice acting at a studio like Funimation, you're just gonna die all the time. You're gonna run into the room as a Marine, and then Luffy's gonna punch you out a window, and you're gonna go, ah! And that's it. You're done for the day. You're just gonna do that. I did that for years. So that was at least 2 solid years of that until I got a named role, which was as Ren in Fairy Tail, and that was in 2013. And I came in for Tyler Walker, and he said, you're gonna do this role as this guy who really loves people, but he pretends like he doesn't love anybody all the time. And he's like, that's called a tsundere. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, it turns out I've played a lot of those now. So I sort of played one, and then they were like, oh, this guy can do that. He's gonna do a lot of those. The male tsundere. So the cool thing about it though, for this one, it was the first time I got to call out my battle attack. Oh man, I've been dreaming of that ever since I was like 8 years old. I'd be alone in my bathroom, I thought. There was one time my mom came into the bathroom while I was like getting ready for school, and I was looking in the mirror and calling out my attacks just like I would see it in the cartoons, and it was like super embarrassing. But I look back on that now and I'm like, man, I've been calling out attacks since I was like 8 years old. I'm so ready for this. So his attack was, I've actually got it recorded because I asked Tyler for a copy of it years later of the session. And it's like airwave or something like that. So the first time I did it, I did like airwave, you know. He's like, oh, no. You gotta really call this thing out. Like when you call these attacks out, look how big the mouth is on the screen. You gotta get really big with this. So this was also my introduction to yelling in anime. There's a lot of yelling. So I got to call out my attack. That was really cool. In 2014, I got my first lead role. And it was in a show called Laughing Under the Clouds, which I think I asked somebody about, and yeah, no one has seen it. Okay. You've seen it! One person, yay! Laughing Under the Clouds is a very deceptive show. The first 3 episodes or so, you feel like you've seen everything 100 times before, and you're like, I've seen this 100 times, and it's been done better 100 times. If you would just make it to the 4th episode, you would realize that this has all been a setup to just pull the rug out from under you, but so many people did not make it. I'm glad that you did. I played Tenkakumo in the dub, and it's the first character I've ever had where I died. I'm going to give you spoilers a little bit here. And it was the first experience that I had with booth death, where you walk into the booth and the director goes, hey, you ready to get started? And you're like, yeah. And they bring up the script. And you can see in the script that your character is about to die. That informed me, the performance that I gave with his death informed me on how I wanted to move forward with the process for acting. And that is, I've told some of you about this already. I don't read the manga, even if I want to. Like, I'd really like to read the My Hero Academia manga, but I don't. I will read the Vigilantes manga, because I don't feel like there's any spoilers in that. But I will not read My Hero Academia, because I want to avoid those spoilers. Because if Eraserhead dies, I want to die with him in the booth. I want to be there in that moment when he's dying. Because the experience of dying with Tenkakumo was real for me. I really loved that character. It was my first lead role. I had been laboring in obscurity for 3-4 years before that at Funimation. And so getting a chance to be that lead, and then to realize it was coming to an end. Also, Tenkakumo was really cool, and I liked him a lot. I really felt that sadness, and I really felt it really impacted me in that moment. So anyway, so that's why I made that decision. So 2014, fast forward to 2016, I was in a show called All Out, and I was one of the leads in that as well. People were starting to sort of learn who I was, although no one could still pronounce my name, and that's fine. That's been my personal struggle my whole life. It's pronounced Wehkamp, by the way. I'll give you that Cliff's Notes. I think I'm going to do a panel, I've decided, on how to pronounce voice actors' names. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but lots of voice actors have very difficult names to pronounce. And I think it'd be fun to just do like a PowerPoint presentation, where we pull up their picture, and then we go, how do you think this person's name is pronounced? And then you say what you think, and then if you get it right, maybe you get a prize, and if you get it wrong, you at least get educated on how to pronounce it, because there's a lot of really tough names in the voice actor community. I don't know why that is. Anyway, fast forward to My Hero Academia. And this was a show that I was watching and I was enjoying. It was a great show, and I knew it was going to be big. Everybody knew it was going to be big. Everybody was talking about it at Funimation. This is the next Dragon Ball. This is the next, whatever. And of course, we heard that before, and it hadn't really panned out exactly the same way. Space Dandy was supposed to be the next Cowboy Bebop. Not exactly. It didn't quite work out that way. There probably never will be another Cowboy Bebop. That was more of a cultural moment than it had anything to do with Cowboy Bebop, but I digress. And there was an audition process held. I was not included in the audition for the original My Hero Academia dub because I was not in town. And so I wouldn't have been able to be available for it. A guy named Alex Organ got cast as Eraserhead. And as I was watching the dub, he was my favorite character. I loved how stoic he was. I loved the comedic elements of him. It's not like he was trying to be funny. It was just a funny character. The stuff he was doing was funny because of who he was, and that really appealed to me. And then, when he starts defending the lives of his children, you just really love that. I mean, just my heart went out to that character. I believed in him. I wanted to see more, and it turned out I was going to see a whole lot more because Alex got an amazing opportunity, and he left the dub. And I think he obviously had to think about that a lot. It was not an easy decision for him, but so he left. And the audition process I sort of covered yesterday, but anyway, I was able to take on the role of Eraserhead. And then people would start trying to pronounce my name at least, and get it wrong. People started sort of being like, oh, I didn't know that Wehkamp could do those sorts of roles. We sort of thought of him as this, and maybe he could do other things. And so since that time, I've been getting more and more things. I did Bed and Breakfast of Spirits, Kakuriyo. I got to play Master in that. Some of you have talked to me about it. I think I brought the only print of Kakuriyo for the entire weekend, so I'm glad of that I brought something from the show. Because a lot of people have really loved it. And yeah, overall, that's been the journey. That kind of brings us up to here. 2019 is going to be the year that I go to the most cons I've ever gone to. I've got 12. It's going to be 12 at least that I've got booked this year. So it's my first opportunity to really go out and meet fans, which is exciting. I actually started in 2017, but I didn't do too many last year either. So yeah, what I'd like to do now, after sort of telling you the journey, is open it up to you and your questions. I don't know how much time we have, but let's do this microphone, I guess. And TJ, if you wouldn't mind, maybe you can facilitate getting this. Hello? Yeah. This could be about, for those of you who have talked to me this weekend, this is your opportunity to talk about voice acting. If you're interested in voice acting and you want to find out more, ask away.
Do you need any agents for your voice acting career?
I didn't start with agents, and most people do not start with agents. It's very rare to start with an agent unless maybe you're like already doing something like modeling, and then maybe you have an agent that you can transition into. Typically, agents want someone who is already working. This is the strange thing of almost any industry, I think I've learned, is that you have to have experience before you can get hired, and before you can get hired, you have to have experience. It's like, how does this work? So this is where meeting people and getting to know people in the industry is the most important way to do this stuff. Yeah?
And what are the Funimation context for auditions in the future?
So Funimation used to do things where they would allow people like me to just send an email and say, hey, I live in Dallas, I'm an actor who's already doing stuff in town, and I'd like to come audition. They don't do that anymore. But they do allow people to send in demos. So if you have made a demo, I think the address is demos@funimation.com. If you've got a voice demo where you are showcasing some of the characters you can do, you can send it there. I will tell you, do not make it longer than 1 minute. Do not make it 1 minute and 1 second. Only do, no matter how good you think you're doing or how awesome it is, keep it to 1 minute. If it's longer than a minute, chances are it'll never be listened to.
And Do you have to voice record at the studio itself, or you can work abroad?
So working abroad is a common question I've gotten too. There are a handful of voice actors who have established themselves already and then moved away. So like, for example, for a while, Jeremy Lee was living in Nashville and pursuing a music career there. And then she would do a source connect, like a remote connection to Funimation to record her roles. Todd Haberkorn used to live in Dallas and moved to Los Angeles. And he's still recording Fairy Tale. You know, he does a source connect and he's doing those remotely. But you may be noticing a trend. These are big name people. These are people that are already very well established. They already have all the connections that they need to facilitate this. People who are starting out are at a massive disadvantage if you're trying to start your career as a remote voice actor for a studio like Funimation. There are too many voice actors. There are literally, I think something like, the newest figure I heard was like 1,000 families a week are moving to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Not for voice acting. Some of them are voice actors. But the cost of living there is awesome compared to lots of places in the US. Employment there is awesome compared to a lot of places in the US. Taxes there are awesome compared to a lot of, so people are moving in constantly. So if you decide you're going to stay in South Carolina and try to compete with people that are picking up and moving there, you're going to lose. It's just the reality of the situation. It's not fair, but they're going to go with locals.
And one more question. What's the salary for your voice acting talents?
So when you start out, it's very, very low to zero. And in fact, I talked to a lot of people who are, you know, my peers in the voice acting world, that when they started off, they were doing a lot of stuff for free, which you really shouldn't do because it sort of brings down, but I understand why people do it, because again, it's like you can't get the job without experience. You can't get experience without the job. It's like, how do I do this? So if you look online, there are some places online where you can get paid work. One of them is called, I think, voiceactingdirectory.com, and there are people that will pay you. It's not much money. You're going to make $15 or whatever. And then also, you know, you can also find indie game development studios. This is really, I feel like, where the meat, if I was starting out today, that's what I'd be looking for. I would start a YouTube channel. I would start doing, you know, I would do monologues on a YouTube channel, or like bits from a YouTube channel to show my range, to show what I can do. And then I would start reaching out to indie game development studios, because those people will work with freelancers and contractors from anywhere. Right, so, and even a place like South Carolina, I guarantee you has got some indie game development here. I don't know where it is, and I don't know who it is, but you can find it. And then you can just say, hey, I'm a voice actor, here's my website, you know, have a website, even if it's just like a Wix site or whatever, you know, and have a little something you recorded that's a demo. It doesn't have to be expensive, doesn't have to be extremely impressive even. Just, here's something, and you know, I want to get some work. Because the key is, you gotta get some work under your belt, and then you got to be able to show that work to other people and say, hey, I was in this indie video game as this character who died instantly, or whatever. As long as they see that you're doing some work, you've got a chance of getting more. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your information.
Yeah. Who else has got a question or a comment? Yes. I got it.
Speaking of your indie game work, you did the voice for Lord for Smite, did you not?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Can you talk about the process of how you did that for Smite? Because I'm a Smite player and I know exactly which character you're playing.
Awesome.
So
thank you. Yeah.
I don't like playing him because he's difficult, but now I'm going to play him more. So thanks, Chris.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. That was really cool. I'm not good at Smite either. It's a really hard game for me. My kind of games are like Stardew Valley. I really like that game. I got into that game real hard. But yeah, so with Smite, that's a non-union gig, but it's contracted through a union signatory studio in Dallas called Okratron 5000, which is owned by Christopher Sabat, the voice of Vegeta. So they contract everything through there. Now, I didn't start off working at Okratron when I started as a voice actor. And actually, I never even got really a chance to get into Okratron until I built up a Funimation portfolio of work. And I couldn't build up a Funimation portfolio of work until I had done a lot of acting around town and some commercial work. And I couldn't build up the commercial work and the acting around town until I studied acting, you know, at the college level, was in one-act plays. See, so it all builds on itself, right? So you get to a point where, you know, I could even go in and audition for a role like that at Overtron. And the experience of doing it is very cool because when you're recording video games, especially for Smite, they really look for big, bold character choices, right? So for this particular character, they're like, this guy's really cool and also futuristic, and he kind of doesn't take anything from anybody. So I was like, well, I'm just gonna push that to the max. Like I'm just gonna be the most cool. Like I'm gonna go hunt down people and take them down and bring them in. You know, like almost silly, like to the point of, but that's what you need in video games. Video games are much less cinematic, I suppose, because people's attention is not really on the voice performance, it's on playing the game. So you gotta hook them quickly, right? This is the whole thing of cutscenes in video games. In the old days, you could not skip cutscenes, and it was just the bane of our existence as gamers. It's like, I don't want to sit through this cutscene, give me some way to skip it. Well, if you give people a way to skip it, they will skip it, right? So you've got to make the performance, you've got to be able to grab people with it, so you got to really come hard with that. So anyway, yeah, the process was, I went in, it was a 3-hour session, and they have a long list of, here's all the cues that we need to get. And we've got the studio on the line, also on the phone. So the rep from the studio is listening into the session, and then we've got a director here in person who's guiding the session. So I might go through and give like 3 of each one, like maybe a battle. He's unleashing his special attack, and I don't remember what it is exactly, but you know, like you know, something like that. And we'll do two more versions of that that are different. And then she'll be like, that was good, next one. Then you go down to the next one, and you do 3 versions of that. And then she might say, you know, oh, well that second one sounded like a little out of range. You know, try that again. Try it again. And you do that for 3 hours. Wow. That's the session. Yeah. Thanks for playing Smite, by the way. It just came out on Nintendo Switch, so I think I'm gonna have to try it out eventually, but I've watched it on YouTube, and I can already tell I'm not good enough for this game. I'm gonna get killed, so.
Been a Smite player since launch, so I've been playing for 6 years.
Awesome, so yes, I would not want to go up against you at all.
No, you wouldn't.
Who else has a question? Or anything they would like to ask me? It doesn't have to be about voice acting. You could ask me about almost anything at all. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Hi, again.
So I actually don't watch a ton of anime. I only got to do like 2.5. Like I watched My Hero, I caught up. I watched through season 1 of One Punch Man, and I'm like halfway through Assassination Classroom. So I'm curious, like, what would you say, like, your top 3 favorite English dubs of any anime product?
Nice, that's a good question. My number 1 of all time is Cowboy Bebop. I am really excited to see what they do with the live action version of it, which Netflix is doing. They just announced the cast, and the cast looks awesome. So I hope they keep it faithful. You know, if they do it justice. Typically, live action versions of anime are terrible. So that's just my opinion. But hopefully hopefully this will be the one that breaks that mold, and everybody can be like, whoa, that was really well done. We can be proud of it. I really like big robots and stuff, so I like shonen anime. I like anime like DBZ and My Hero Academia. But that said, I think perhaps an underrated anime that some people may not know about, that you shouldn't sleep on because it's awesome, especially the dub, is Hetalia. If you haven't seen Hetalia, that is just a laugh out loud, hilarious. Almost every single episode, you'll be laughing. Like it's really funny. And then let's see, I can throw out another one that maybe not many people would know about. Most of the big stuff, you know, Evangelion and stuff like that, people know about it. You know, so I'm trying to think of stuff that would be like deeper cuts. There's another one called, if you like kind of an ensemble drama that has a lot of action, 91 Days is a really good one. That's a really good dub, where a lot of the actors that are doing it are using dialects. So a lot of Irish accents, Scottish accents, a lot of English accents, things like that. And they're very well done. Funimation did a great job on that one. Yeah, I'm trying to think of more that might be kind of deeper cuts. Those are the ones that are coming to mind at the moment. Yeah. If I think of any more, I'll throw it out. Yeah.
What about like 3 worst?
The worst, yeah. Well, if you go back to the 80s, I mean, there's a really funny one on YouTube that I'd like to watch and show people if they've never seen it, called Garvey's Wing. I don't know if you've heard of it or not, but go onto YouTube and look for Garvey's Wing. It's terrible. It's really, really bad. And then if you want to see the worst dub ever made in the entire world, it's the Transformers Headmasters dub from Singapore.
I'm a Transformers fan, yes, I'm aware.
And so what they did is they localized it using actors in Singapore for an English-speaking audience, because there were a lot of people there because of the military base. So they did an English dub, and most of the English dub actors did not speak English. If you can imagine that, yeah. So YouTube that one as well, Transformers Headmasters dub. It is hilariously awful. And it's not, they did no adaptation on the script. It's direct translations. So you can't even imagine. It's terrible. It's wonderfully terrible. Thanks for your question. We got about 15 minutes. Hi.
So your kids are about that age where they love watching cartoons, right?
Yeah.
Do they watch anime, and how do they feel about your career?
Yeah, good question. So I got cast after a pretty long audition process, I got cast as the lead in Space Battleship Yamato 2199, which is a remake, a reboot of Star Blazers, the cartoon that I enjoyed that introduced me to anime when I was 6 or 7 years old. And it was incredible to be able to do this show, both because of what it meant to me, but also because it's a fantastic show. It's just really awesome. Some of the best, in my opinion, some of the best animation that's ever been done of like sci-fi and space battles. It's incredible. And I made the decision when I got that role that I was going to watch it with my kids, with my older boys, every week as it came out. And we would sit down Wednesday night, every single night, and they would watch their dad on TV be the lead role in this space cartoon. And for me, it was the coolest thing maybe ever in my life. I don't know. I mean, there's been a lot of cool stuff, but it's definitely up there. For them, they were just like, oh, well, everybody has a dad who's in cartoons, and this is just the cartoon that our dad is in. So we're just gonna watch this cartoon, and it's an okay cartoon. Sometimes it's a boring cartoon, and I'd rather be playing Switch. But it's like you can never be famous to your children. You can never be anything more than just dad. And if you do something cool, they're like, oh, well, probably other dads do that cool stuff too. Like other dads are on TV also. So like it just doesn't mean as much to them, I suppose. But I think when they're older, we'll all be able to look back on it, and it'll mean something more to them probably, at least I hope so. They did really like the show. They wanted to continue watching the next season, which is 2202, which is airing right now. But it gets really dark. Like in the first couple episodes, people are like killing themselves, and I'm like, we're gonna tap the brakes on this. Wait till you're a little bit older for that. And they understood. Actually, they were fine with it. They're playing baseball right now, so they're super into baseball. So they're like, the other day we were eating dinner, and they're like, do you do any cartoons that are about baseball? I was like, no, not really. Like, just like, sorry guys, you know. I'll work on that. I'll try to do some cartoons about baseball for you. Not how any of this works, but okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's the answer. Yes.
Hello. I want to ask, what kind of IT work did you do, and do you still do it like part-time or are you full-time?
Yes. So I was doing contract work, and it started off as like doing some kind of low-level support work. I was up, I'd be up at like 2 in the morning answering questions for users, and it was in the medical IT industry, so it'd be nurses and doctors that would, this computer is not doing what I want it to do, or whatever. And then I moved up into a management position, and I was doing, but it was always sort of contract type stuff, you know. So it gave me the freedom to be able to do this voice acting thing on the side, it would be on the side. I mean, Funimation would record in the middle of the night. You could be there at 9 to 10 p.m., you know, recording stuff. So, and I would do that. I would do that happily. I would work 8 hours at an IT job, and then I would just be like, eat dinner with the family, bye, I'm going to the studio, and I'd be there for 3 hours or whatever. And I did that for 8 years. So it was like really a grind, but I was able to, you know, over the last couple of years, I've just kind of been slowly, basically since I got an agent, and I started doing better paying commercial work, while at the same time incorporating some of these convention appearances, while at the same time I kicked off a Dungeons & Dragons podcast that I run with other voice actors in 2018, and I've got some sponsors that pay me for that as well. So if you like Dungeons & Dragons, check out the Dungeon Booth on any of your favorite podcast places. So I've been able to kind of put together things to replace that, and so the work just kind of started, you know, I just let it kind of tail off, until now all I do is voice acting. 2019 is the first year that I'm just 100% supporting myself, you know, voice acting and creative projects. But it's been 8 years, you know, to get to this point, so. Yeah. But a lot of database problems. I used to do, I don't know, you're probably in IT, that's probably why you're asking. Yeah, I did a lot with MongoDB and SQL Server. We were always having problems with data feeds, so we'd have data coming in from customers and we'd have to solve problems. It's boring, it's incredibly boring. But it paid the bills. Got about 5 minutes. Anybody, any more questions before we shut it down? Yes?
If you had to fight an exact copy of yourself to the death, how would you win?
I've never been asked that question before. That's a good question. But the first thing I thought of was the old 8-bit Nintendo classic, Legend of Zelda: The Adventures of Link, where in the end of it, spoiler alert from a 30-year-old video game, guys, at the end of it, you fight yourself. You fight your shadow. It also reminds me of Double Dragon, which perhaps some of you remember. At the end of it, you fight your brother, your twin brother. Oh, it was him all along. It would be tough, because I'm not a violent person. So I would be fighting somebody who's also not a violent person. And I think we would probably try to talk out our differences. And then if we couldn't, we would both surprise attack each other at the same time and probably kill each other at the same time. I think that's probably what would happen. Maybe time for 1 or 2 more questions.
This one's a little random.
Okay.
Do you have any like the figurines of the Eraserhead or any other characters that you like?
Yeah. I was so gratified and excited to see that Funko came out with not 1 but 2 pops of Eraserhead. One is the sort of locally available everywhere one, and then one is a Hot Topic exclusive, and it's the hero costume. So he's got the yellow visor on, and he just looks like he's ready to fight, you know. Whereas the other one is more chill. And of course, when I go to these conventions, people bring them up to me to sign them all the time, and I'm so happy to do that because, yeah, getting a figurine associated with your character is like, for a voice actor who's doing anime, it's like one of the biggest holy grail moments, right? Like Chris Rager, who does the voice of Mr. Satan from Dragon Ball Z, also Mr. Torg from Borderlands, if anybody played Borderlands, still does not have a Funko Pop of Mr. Satan after doing it for like 20 years. And occasionally he'll get on Twitter and he'll @ Funko Pop and be like, "Where is Mr. Satan?" You know, in all caps. Because it is cool. I mean, it's super cool to see. And another thing I'll add to that I really like is going to the dealer's room at these conventions and seeing the amazing art, or artist alley, the amazing artwork that's produced of Eraserhead. It just blows my mind. I mean, first of all, people have incredible talents. Every city I go to, there's amazing artists. And you just want to give them all your money, you know, to like support them and just be like, this is incredible what you're doing. But the original takes on it too. I mean, I guess My Hero Academia has been out for what, 3 years now in the States? And yet, everywhere I go, I see some new fresh take on it that I have never thought of before, never seen before. Just this weekend, somebody showed up, a girl showed up dressed as Pastel Bakugo. Never seen that before, that was a new one. So yeah, seeing people's originality and creativity is incredibly gratifying. It's part of the reason why it's fun to come to a con, right? Is just to get to see all the cool stuff. Well, then it's your character, so it's like, oh, that's even better in a way. Yeah. And anybody else with a question?
Do you have any family pets?
Yes, I have a pet. I have a big dog. He's a golden doodle. He's a big dummy, and his name is Yoshi. And before that, I had a Siamese cat. Her name was Karma, and she was a saint. She was and all cats are crazy, I think, just to one degree or another. Yeah, just a little bit. Karma, if I would go to bed, she'd be like, oh, well, it's time to wake up. Like at any time. If I went to bed at 8 p.m., I went to bed at midnight. She's like, well, this is the time for us to have some quality time and hang out. And I'm just going to lay on your face until you get up and we don't sleep at all tonight. Because I'm just going to sleep all day. You can sleep all day too, right? You don't have to go to work. You can just stay here and sleep all day. So I'll just bother you all night long. That was Karma. But a very sweet kitty. And yeah, I love animals. I've always loved animals. I grew up with dogs and cats as well. Had a fish, it didn't turn out too well. The fish never survived. I don't know what that is. It's a lesson for children, I suppose, on mortality. Otherwise, I don't know what the point of fish are. They never survive. I don't know. And I think we're just about out of time. Does anybody have anything else? Any other questions? Ask me almost anything. All right? What's that? I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Do you know the way?
Do I know the way? I don't. I know the way home. I'm getting on a plane to go home. I know that. Yes?
How did you manage to spell Eraserhead's name now?
Oh, is it you? I saw you on Instagram. I blame myself. It was my fault. I apologize for that. I'd be happy to rectify it by perhaps doodling in an R. Or if it's, I was going to say it might be better that way.
I love it.
You have the only misspelled Eraserhead autograph from the weekend, as far as I know.
I watched you do it, and I didn't say anything because I thought maybe I was wrong, and I've been saying his name wrong this whole time.
Yeah. Like maybe he knows, actually his name is Eraserhead.
Eraserhead? What?
No, that was just my bad. And what'll happen is I'll be signing things for people while talking to them. I've done this before, this is funny. And this was in January at a convention. I was talking to somebody, and we were talking about Star Wars or something unrelated, and I just started writing about Star Wars, like on the thing that I was writing about. And I was like, oh, wow, that's not right at all. But they loved it, they took it with them. They were like, this is special, this is unique. I'm like, so maybe I should just screw up everybody's autographs, I guess. No, I don't know, that would be bad.
Cherish it forever.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for posting it, because I got a good laugh out of it when I saw it too. Like, Eraserhead, come on! It's not Eraserhead. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming out. And for the weekend, too. For those of you that have talked to me multiple times, come and see me, I can't thank you enough. It's been a great visit to South Carolina. I can't wait to come back and see you again. So thanks.